Welcome to the Oh Bro Show. I am your host, joined by my fellow host, Seth, and I'm Josh. And today, we're really excited to host this conversation with Bob the Baptist. Seth.
Let's go. Let's go.
Seth's stoked for that.
We got him.
I do have to say, in mutual excitement for a guest, it's exceedingly high.
Yeah.
I've thrown some guests, and we love all of our guests that have come on the show, but I've thrown some guests.
No one loves them more.
No one loves them more than we do. But I've thrown some guests at Seth, and he's come back and he's like, I saw a couple videos. Seth is like,
I'm a fan now.
Seth ate these videos up. Okay, so we're excited to have this conversation. We're gonna be talking about Baptist theology, probably culture war issues, because Seth and I are brain like that as well. And Bob the Baptist talked about that too. Yeah, a little brain rotted. Yeah. But honestly, we're just gonna hear from Bob and his opinions on various things. I want to know about Baptists in the culture and online. Where do we stand, and where do we need to go to be better and to spread the good word of our theology, which is mine, and Seth can attest to that too. But figuring it out. So we're gonna bring him up. He can give himself a more in-depth introduction, and then we'll go from there. So welcome to the show, Bob the Baptist.
So I have to ask, is the O bro, is that a play on Theo bro?
Bro, we've been asked that like 3 times.
Yeah, it's honestly not. It was kind of just ironic, because originally when we started the show, we didn't know how theologically we originally
did it as like a movie thing. We're gonna just yap about movies.
There's gonna be movies, and then it was politics. Like we started out way more political, and then we got more as I got more interested in theology, and Seth, I dragged him along. Now it's more our conversations are theologically focused. So yeah, we've had some ortho bro. Like, are you guys Orthodox Christians or Theo bros? And no,
That's
it's just
strange, bro.
Our last name starts with O, and we're the O bros. So that's how you got the name.
I love it. Yeah, no, that's great.
how we get them in. We do the bait and switch.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So you didn't think of that?
No, we're Baptist.
We're Baptist.
Yeah.
You're gonna convert.
So that
I didn't really know beforehand of like the Theo bro. Like some people I guess wear that mantle with pride, but usually I think it's used as you're making fun of a cringe lord, for being.
I do think it's mostly like a term of slander. Like I think people take it on, but maybe more people do. I don't see that tossed around as much anymore, because I think that the crew that was the Theo Bros in the past have now become like more Christian nationalists and stuff like that. So, but no, I thought about it after I had said, let's do it. I was like, I think I just said it and it just kind of flowed off the tongue. Theo bro? But anyway, that's cool.
Yeah.
It's Andrew Wilson. Who's the other guy? It's kind of whack politically. You know who I'm talking? The white dude with blonde hair.
I don't think that's a lot of them.
You tweeted at him or something.
I've tweeted at a lot of people.
Okay.
But before we get to that, I want to, Bob the Baptist, you are a content creator. Well, at least that's how I discovered you. But can you give us a little bit more of your background, how you got started on YouTube, what led you to make a channel, making content, and any of the other relevant details beforehand kind of led you to where you're at now?
Yeah, when I started a Bible study not long after coming to Christ, around the age of 16, and I've been doing some form of ministry ever since. Soon after marriage, I started taking the call to ministry seriously and like wanting to do it more formally and officially. But I had always, right out of high school, I said, and in some ways I regret this, but obviously the Lord is in control. But I said in high school, as I was graduating, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I know I'm going to preach. And I still, to this day, I learned this from Tom Nettles. He always introduces himself as a preacher, even though he's one of the best Baptist historians alive, if not the best. And he still just says, I'm a preacher. And I've tried to train myself to just, first and foremost, I preach, when the Lord calls me to do so for churches. But I did try to take that pretty seriously sometime around 2016. I was like, landed in a church and was an associate pastor for 5 years. and then the Lord closed that church, and it was really painful. We had to say that we dedicated our whole selves to it, and then to see it come to a close, it was really, really painful. And we kind of were trying to figure out not just how to pay the bills, but just like, there's like an identity crisis, I guess, that came with that to a degree. And I grew up with a camera. Like, I went through 2 or 3 cameras when I was very young, made hundreds of movies, very horrible movies, but like just always playing, daddling around with some creative things. And then because I had done some weddings and some documentary work and I had the gear, I honestly can't remember what that conversation looked like in too much detail, but I just remember one day being at the park with my wife, and she was like, "You have to do YouTube." And I didn't really take her that seriously, but I did start doing a little bit of branding. Like, what would that look like? So I read Huxley's Brave New World and reread Amusing Ourselves to Death by Neil Postman, because I knew that those things were going to come on. We can get into this more if you want, but I'd always been morbidly obsessed with theonomy and postmillennialism. I was like a postmillennialist, a little kind of sort of I was for a while, and I really flirted with theonomy, but it was like, I think what people really, really want is like the practical, like, okay, what does my Christian life mean for like the real world? I don't want to be so heavenly minded that I'm of no earthly use. And I think that, I mean, we're human beings. And so we just want to know, like, how then should we live? Like Schaefer said. So I think I knew that it was going to be that I was going to touch on political issues to some degree. I've gotten way more into the actual policy side of it that I didn't expect, but now, like, I have the news on all day. I read the newspaper. like I'm like really a lot more into it than I thought I was going to be. But for like almost a decade, I listened to everything that Jeff Durbin, Doug Wilson, Joel Webbin, John Harris, I'm smear his name because I know that he's not really associating with them nearly as much anymore. But I just, everything that they said, and Timon Klein and Stephen Wolf, I was just obsessed because there was something about that didn't sit right with me, but I couldn't put my finger on it. So I was just like morbidly curious, like, okay, what is off here? And then like, there's so much, our lives are so like it's weird in hindsight. But because of that background, and then I had training, I graduated from New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary, the level college at that seminary. And then I went in, and I still have to finish that degree, to Covenant. I'm halfway through my Covenant Baptist Theological Seminary degree. And so I had some training, and I was blessed with some really incredible mentorship, some Reformed pastors in the area. So I had enough like kind of theological framework to be able to engage in some of these things. And I knew that because of those interests, it's like all I think about, I've done this for a decade, is Thomas Aquinas, Van Til, theonomy, and politics and the Christian faith as a Baptist. So I knew the YouTube channel was going to be on that. And I always had a strong hunch that those theological issues drive or like trickle down, snowball effect into movements and people aren't aware of those theological motivators and culture and drivers. So I just thought, how can I make that like relevant? And it's obviously the only thing that I'm probably theologically going to want to talk about like every single week, making things about it. So we took at the beginning of 2024, we're like, okay, we're still going to do like the video business. We're still going to work with clients, but let's just try out YouTube and see what that would be like. And said, okay, for a month, we're just going to release a video every single week and just see how it goes. and just learn and just live on YouTube Studio, watch the stats, see how they perform, see how to make better videos. And then it did well enough to where we could table it. And then we basically sat on it for like 6 months. We were like, okay, what does this look like in our lives? Like, you know, or what are we going to do? So then that's when we said, okay, let's start, and we can give ourselves 6 months to get to 500 subs. And if we can do that, then we know that we're not wasting our time. And we got 1,000 in 6 months. So we were like, okay, maybe this is something that, like, maybe it's not ever going to be a full-time thing, but it's something to always chip away at, you know, just kind of plod and be faithful, and then just see what God does with it. And so that's kind of the backstory. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah. No, that was really good.
Does your wife help you make all the videos and stuff?
So it's funny about that. We made 2 or 3, and then one we made, in my opinion, flopped. It flopped for my standard I was setting for myself. And I was like, what in the world? So it's kind of funny, like, that we put all of ourselves into each video to make the best videos we can, but so much of it is in God's hand, right? And like, looking back on the original Antioch videos that I had made, that for us at the time, like, blew up. We didn't expect them to do that well. Those videos, we did the least amount of writing and planning for up to that point. And I remember, because I just knew so much about the Ogden guys and Doug, and already had enough opinions on it. And I thought it was funny that they were canceling Doug. So I was like, let's just lean into that. I hopped out of the shower. I threw on a tank, and I said, okay, baby, sit on the other side of this camera. And you just ask me about the drama, and I'll just narrate it to you. And she kind of is like,
that's smart. Yeah, that's awesome.
And she's not like she's not theologically trained. Like, she's not me. So she doesn't know all the jargon and stuff. And she's been a really good sounding board, that I know that if it doesn't make sense, then I need to reword it or something like that.
That's super smart.
That's really smart.
And so she doesn't do any prep or anything, but she does need to be in the room for every single video as much as possible, or the video's just not good. Also, she brings out something inside of me. Like, and she'll like say jokes and make it funnier, or like make me laugh, or just put me in a different mood. And we get outtakes from it. And that's like the extent of it. She does every now and then, she'll help with thumbnails, or if I'm writing something, I'll ask her if this makes sense. I always try to go over the script beforehand. Like, hey, does this make sense? And we'll rework it. So that's kind of her involvement. But I will say that I couldn't do it without her. Like, I wouldn't probably keep doing it if she wasn't involved in that way. So,
do you write out everything that you say, or do you just kind of do bullet points and then just kind of spit it out?
It's always changing, and I think I'm comfortable saying it really just depends. Honestly, based on the topic and the video and what we're dealing with. Do you guys know who Robert Rodriguez is? He made Spy Kids, Road to Mexico, like Spy Kids is my favorite from his, but he did a lot of other really,
those movies are
Planet Terror, I think he did co-directed some double feature with Tarantino. Anyway, he was on Joe Rogan a couple months ago, and he said that all the script ideas that he writes, he uses index cards. So he'll put he'll storyboard with index cards, and I've started doing that. So I will use AI. It's all using the information I give it, and it'll structure it. So I've done that for 20 videos or so. Like, it'll structure it for me. But I also use index cards, and so I'll write out things like in a notebook, but then I'll go and like put all the major ideas on index cards and just organize it, and that's helped a lot. But again, my wife, like, no matter how I write it, I need to like run it by her to see if it makes sense. And so that's kind of how I do it. But there is at least, I'm always reading every single day. I try to read, 50 or so pages of something every single day related to what I'm writing about, to give me, and I'll read stuff online and stuff as well. So I'm always writing, but whether or not that turns into a script, it just depends on where that goes, and it'll end up on some index cards or something like that. So
Yeah.
rambling
When
about
you
that.
started, yeah, when you started YouTube and as you're going, did you identify like that you were filling a vacuum or a void like with the Baptist theology? Because from my perspective, like you're picking up what seems to be an empty void in my head, which is kind of weird. It's counterintuitive because, you know, at least if you're anywhere on X around the theology bros, they think, you know, the vast majority of people are at least Baptistic, but not really Baptist in any historic sense.
Right.
So I really identified like a void in my content where, I mean, Gavin Ortland is certainly one who defends the Baptist tradition in some form. But
In
from
some
a
form,
Baptist,
it is. He's
Yeah.
not really hardline Reformed Baptist. I get it's not clear.
Correct.
If he
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, like he's Calvinistic, but he goes to, like, he's a pastor of a non-denominational church, so he's not pastoring a Reformed Baptist church. So I do think that there's some nuance there. But did you see that void, and then why do you think that is? At least when we're talking about online culture as it stands.
Yeah, I think I did, but I wouldn't have put it that way until after having done it. Like I was
Yeah.
self-aware enough to know or not be surprised when I got reactions went to one of my videos. So like I clipped a mic to my daughter's Barbie doll hair because I thought it was funny.
Yes, I think I
And-
saw one of those. Yeah.
And then a faithful Reformed Baptist brother pastor said, "Why are you using why a Barbie?" But that was only because he agreed with everything else. I assumed he agreed with everything else I had said because I said Orthodox Reformed Baptist theology. So I am not going to pretend at all that I can come anywhere close filling the void that Joe Thorne and Jimmy Fowler. Did you guys familiar with Doc and Devo?
I'm not. No.
Oh,
Wait, actually,
man.
I think they spoke at Redeemer when I was in high school. I think I know. Are they the guys that do the cigars in a
Yeah.
car thing?
Pastors in cars.
Yeah,
smoking cigars.
yeah.
They
They
were-
spoke at my church in high school.
That is so cool. They inspired a lot of people. I think they were some of the few podcasters / Reformed Baptist influencers that were like
Mm-hmm.
cool. I guess.
Yeah,
I don't
like
know how
actually
else to say it.
entertaining.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
when they left, there was a void. I did not start YouTube to say, "Oh, I'm going to take their place," but I did notice that was rare. Doc and Devo was rare. That most of the time, it seemed to me that Reformed Baptists, and I think it's reasonable explanation. I think that Reformed Baptists, because there has been such a lack of institutional identity for
Yeah.
so long, and it's wrapped up in this weird thing called the SBC and evangelical Christianity, that I think I knew enough going in that there's a reason why there's a certain branding and aesthetic with Reformed Baptist like X accounts. Like there's a certain kind of, I think of, and they're incredible. I love the London Lyceum, Center for Baptist Renewal. Those kinds of projects, they do have a certain academic aesthetic that appeals to only certain kind of people. I think, and I could be wrong about this, but I think that what motivates that for the most part is like kind of like putting their best foot forward as like serious, thoughtful Reformed Christians. But that is a niche audience that appeals to, mostly like academics. Another thing that I was self-aware about, because I'm a two kingdom theology guy, is that very often the guys that are two kingdom guys, they're also bookish in the best sense of the term, but they're very like in the books and reading a ton with all the hashtag we distinguish, like, and so I think because of that aesthetic, but I know that what I do isn't out of bounds in the Reformed tradition. It's just not the energy that most of these guys want to contribute to online. And so I was comfortable saying, and it's something I learned from Joe Thorne, like the rowdy behavior that I exhibit is not out of bounds from the confession,
Yeah.
from, you know, in terms of the law of God. It might be societally unorthodox, but it's not out of bounds. And if anything, what if you could use that to even get attention and get a laugh? And so going in, I was like, okay, I'm not doing this as a pastor. I guess you could say that I'm doing this as a resource ministry for churches, but I don't even see it as that. I see half my audience as pastors banging their head against the wall in their study, and they want to laugh and also maybe learn something. And then the other half being the confused Christian politically, like, wait, where do I go? I feel like I don't have a political home or a denominational home. That's the other half of the audience as well. So I really tried to lean into that. And now looking back, I can say it a little bit more clearly. But at the time, I think I just had enough self-awareness to say, so that's my answer for, yeah, kind of, sort of. And I think that's the reason why that you don't see that kind of energy.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I guess it's encouraged me to be more openly Baptist. Cause like I was explaining, I don't know if I can't remember if this is off the call, but when Seth and I started this channel, we were certainly more politically motivated. Oriented. And it was right around the election season. So we certainly fell prey to the algorithm overlords, which frustrates me in different angles. But when I realized, you know, there's Presbyterians have like the Redeemed Zoomer, and he's like the spokesperson.
I was going to mention
Gen
him.
Z.
I think that he's a really good example of, sorry to cut you off, but he's a good example of that, like, Zoomer energy, like that chronically online, like energy that your
gamer energy.
Your typical like
it's wild.
traditional, hey, we're gonna do like Ligonier style, like, hey, we're gonna do this as a resource for the church, and real straight lace tie, and Redeemed Zoomer's like, no, dude, I'm a kid, I'm a YouTuber. Let's like
play Minecraft and talk about theology.
Yeah. And it's the internet. There's like a lack of self-awareness about how like what we're doing is it's internet stuff. It's not.
It's it can be entertainment. Like literally, it can just be entertainment.
Yeah.
And that's what I think with Seth and I, we were like, and it's at small level because we're just getting started. We're very small, but it's like they're being able to have conversations with various amounts of people and being unabashedly Baptist, and not in like a cringe way. Like, we're genuinely interested in learning more about our Baptist heritage and becoming more Reformed Baptist, if you can even say that, while still having the aesthetic of, like you said, not necessarily the academic, like we're not in
the
suits.
ties.
I'm far more looking like a Joe Rogan type guy. That at least it helps. I think it helps. I don't want to make it about brand, but it helps the perception that Baptists are either the evangeli and basically are confused with Pentecostals, or are like you said, the hyper academic Baptists that are trying to legitimately fill a void, I think, in the theological academics. But that's reacting.
Pull that up. That's a great comment. I am so happy. I went to Boyce as well. Sorry, Bob. So I'm just happy that my alma mater.
Did you graduate from Boyce?
Yes, sir.
Dude, that's awesome.
Yes, sir.
That's awesome. So did you ever have Tom Nettles? I mentioned him.
I don't think I did. I took politics, philosophy, and economics.
Okay.
So I took a lot more just humanities and stuff like that. So I didn't have to take a ton of like theology courses as much. I mean, they require theology 1 and 2. But yeah, I knew a lot more of the I got really close to Isaiah. Should meet this guy. So Isaiah, you gotta listen up. Talk to Dr. Bosch. He's sick. So
I wanted to say something about branding.
Yeah.
I was going to say that I think because of like having my own business and reading business books and learned about like lead generation, for example. Like you put out is like the idea behind advertising and marketing or whatever. Like, hey, you put out, you get a certain amount of leads, you'll get a certain amount back. And then with my Reformed Baptist like training, I knew just need to make a category for this. Okay, so this isn't ministry, so it is a business. And a lot of people don't see their YouTube channel as a business. And I applied everything I had learned in the video business to YouTube. And I actually see my videos as lead generators for community. And so like, hey, I just want to make the best stuff I can. And then in order to get their foot in the door to something bigger and more communal and you know, we'll see where it goes. But I feel like, have you guys ever noticed this, that people use the term like, well, you're platforming yourself to delegitimize their argument. Oh, and some people will say it about Joe Webbin. Oh, he's just platforming himself. Well, Joe Webbin can be wrong about what he says because what he said was wrong, but not precisely just because there's nothing wrong in and of itself in platforming, right? It just depends on, number one, what's your motive? What are you trying to do? And then they're just things like that. And then, thinking in terms of a brand. What is my brand? What am I trying to do? And I feel like sometimes, maybe getting to your point about being unashamedly Baptist, our Christian faith makes things like online life or politics or culture kind of like real muddy, because we want to do a lot of very serious thinking about it. And we want to be godly. We don't want to be bad stewards of what God's given us. But sometimes unbelievers can like outshine us in their productivity on something like a podcast, because they're not like having to do all the theological and intellectual gymnastics that we rightly want to put ourselves through. But what can end up happening is that we end up with like some grandiose like theonomy or version for cultural engagement, or I need a reason. And I do realize that I had some training, so I could do that maybe a little bit quicker than others. But to me, it was like, okay, I don't need to feel bad that I'm branding myself or that I'm platforming and I'm trying to build anything. I'm just going to go into it. So it was almost like a, what's the word? I don't know. It was like an irony of sorts. Like the way that I was approaching it was almost a message highlighting, or almost like highlighting the message of the channel itself. And that is politics and culture for normal people. That Baptist culture, Baptist politics is actually politics for normal people. So don't overthink it, just do it. And what's your motive? Is your motive because you're motivated by gratitude for what Christ has done on the cross for poor sinners, bleeding and dying for them, and what you're doing is an act of gratitude for Jesus? All right, go do it. Has God called you to do it? Okay, well then go do it. It doesn't have to. It's not rocket science.
Yeah. And I want to say there's a level of stewardship that we're called to, I think, of being part of culture as Christians. Like we can't abandon culture, because if culture is what society is made of, we're called to be good stewards of the earth, which also includes that. Yeah, exactly. And so I personally want to applaud you for just making like good content. It's not what I've seen a lot on YouTube is a lot of just, and I know this is ironic saying this because this is what we kind of do. We just do it on a greater scale, on a longer scale in terms of our video length. Is just this over edited, sit down at a desk and yap for no reason. Where it seems like you're actually able to make concise points that are backed up historically, philosophically, and theologically, without just rambling on and on and on. Like, you're very concise, and it's good content.
I thought about this when we made 5 books that changed my life. This is an innocuous video we made when we started like a little soft break. And I was like, no one would have cared what 5 books changed my life if this was the first video I put on YouTube. And a lot of people start that way, and that's the normal way of doing it. That's how most people do it. But my thought process was, I want to make a name for myself, I guess, essentially. Like, why would anybody want to watch a video about 5 books that changed my life? Well, I wanted to first give some help to the Antioch controversy, you know, and so I think, yeah, I also see the videos as art.
Yeah. Right.
You know, it's not.
And I think that's the tension too that you mentioned, Bob, before, is that you have a lot of Baptists that are interested in going straight into ministry, pastoral ministry, and these are the people that we place in authority. And so a good example of this is like a Gavin Ortland, who his online presence is really an extension of his ministry. I think that is his full-time ministry right now, is his online presence. And so there isn't, again, like that distinction, and so there is a balance there, you know, like in a sense, Seth and I, by evangelizing to some of the people that we have conversations with, is ministry, but it's not like, I don't think of our YouTube channel as a ministry. It's not
the church.
It's an art form. It's not the church. It's an art form. And it is content, and that's not to diminish it. It's to say we want to make good content in the conversation that we host, and I'm sure likewise.
Well, I see it as like a book, you know. And Spurgeon said that like sermons are supposed to be the primary means by which God saves people, but then he called gospel tracts as like I think he called them silent sermons or something like that. But like silent evangelists, where they have I can't remember the words he used to describe it. And the same is true for books. I think he said books as well. And it's like a YouTube video can do the same thing a book can do. And it's not ministry, but it can be a resource. And it's not sacramental or ministerial, but it is eternal. Because what we do, Gladiator, what we do in this life echoes into eternity. And so you want to do what you're doing for the glory of God, no matter what it is. But you don't have to. And I think Gavin Ortland is such a good example of like a Christian YouTuber. And he's probably, contrary to Joel Webbin's opinion, he's probably one of the best we got. Gavin Ortland.
Yeah.
But
I do want to take us there.
Okay.
Because you're an expert on this compared to us. And we've touched on it a little bit in our conversations, but where online Christian conversations are going in terms of politics, there's a not really a counterbalance from what I can see of people that are willing to go to bat for constitutionalism, republicanism, like just the way that our government is structured. Even you can broaden that out to democracy. A lot of people are anti-democracy in these online circles.
Just actual conservatism.
Well, yeah. What conservatism was commonly referred to like 10 years ago, that's no longer really what you're not conserving anything. So the move now, and that's in the Doug Wilson crowds, that's in the Joel Webbin crowds, is something different. And we've talked about Stephen Wolf in previous episodes too. And so from your experience, what even is that? What do we call that? We've called it woke right. We've called it Christian nationalism. What do you call it?
My favorite term is the new right. But it's really not that new. And I really can't be too helpful here, but I do know it goes back to Pat Buchanan and his run, and then when that fell through, they say that, and I'm kind of going off of memory from things that like Andrew Isker and CJ Engel have said in the past about Pat Buchanan. So take this with a grain of salt, but I do consider them like authoritative sources on Pat Buchanan. So I do remember that was a pretty important figure, and when he like, there wasn't that kind of what's considered paleoconservative energy until Trump. When Trump ran in 2016, that was like a revival in paleoconservatism that hadn't been there up to that point. And so I do say it's new right, but it's new in the sense of like, almost like how R.J. Rushdoony had kind of spearheaded the homeschooling movement and made American Reconstruction very popular at the end of the 20th century. And then it like dies, but then like when the Young Restless Reform movement exploded, now theonomy was like popular again. And I kind of mean new in that sense. And also new
Phoenix. Its relevance.
Its relevance, yeah, because the leftism and wokeism had gotten so bad, and technology had given people a place to express their disenfranchisement and how they felt seen. I think Nick Fuentes is a fantastic example of this, because his thing is he's very open about the fact that Trump, he felt, represented him, and he was so pro-Trump. But then I can't remember, I'm kind of forgetting, but I think it was not long after his first term, like into his first term, Nick was like, okay, this guy's, I think I heard him say this today, that like they were all BSers, but then they had a good crew of people that came along and just were, you know, BS, but in their direction, and pretended to be paleocons, and they weren't really. Cat's not out of the bag yet in terms of Trump. Well, you know, let him finish his term and we'll see. But the ideas of paleoconservatism are really at the heart of the new right. And the new right I like as a term because it kind of can bring together aspects of American Reconstruction and theonomy and aspects of Christian nationalism. And when I say Christian nationalism, I mean almost exclusively Stephen Wolfe's project. It can bring in aspects of that, and then aspects of Corey Mahler is, I'm trying to categorize all these people in my head. Like Corey Mahler, he's a Lutheran, and he's more explicitly theological in his, you want to call it anti-Semitism. And then Nick Fuentes is more religious, not like theological, but he's a cradle Catholic. So he's like, he's
very political though.
First. Whereas like Matthew Barrett, there's nothing political about that at all. It was just a move toward tradition. But it's all part of this same like cultural restlessness as I see it. But like a Nick Fuentes is like, politics is his primary agenda, and religion is the primary motivator for that. He said, look, the issue is, I don't know if you guys saw my latest video, but the issue is the cross of Christ, is what he said. F-bomb, F-bomb, F-bomb. But the real thing is the cross. We need to push that. And so, you know, I don't like, how do you, it's this like complex of movements, and tech is this thing that brings like all these different long developing like traditions and theological movements and ideas and circles within Christianity, whether they're Reformed or Lutheran or Catholic or what, or EO, whatever it is, they're all getting pulled together into this like complex of restless conservatism. And I think it's the future. And what's so interesting is back in the day when I went to Bible college or studied these things, it was like the question was, what does Christian engagement in politics look like? Let's about this. And now it's going to be, how do we respond to Caesar? Because that's where things are headed. So does that answer your question?
That's a hard drop. And then that's a mic. I don't like to that point. Where are the Baptists at? Like, they're not, with the exception of maybe Joel Webbin, if you even, but I don't even consider him really.
We don't accept him. We don't claim him.
But where are they? So they're not in this project. Really, it doesn't seem in any serious form at all.
That's my case is not. And look, let me be, I might upset some people. I tried to make this clear the first time I ever talked about Stephen Wolfe before, but I don't know if it's clear because I've had other people reach out and ask me what my thoughts are. I think that Stephen Wolfe is a Presbyterian. And he's quoting Protestants, and he calls it a pan-Protestant project. I think he's right. I don't think that Stephen Wolfe is a crypto-Catholic as far as I can tell. It's just old Paedo-Baptist, Puritan, Presbyterian political theology. And I disagree. right? Like
Right.
one of my favorite books that I own is the J.B. Lightfoot's Minutes of the Westminster Assembly. And he's just like writing down the minutes of recording like their theological discussions, which end up in the Westminster Standards. And at a political theological level, I fundamentally disagree. And so what I see Stephen Wolfe doing is just trying to bring that back. Now, the tricky part about that is we live in a post-monarchical age. Where now we live in a democratic republic. And what they're saying is they want to go back to it.
Yep.
And like the substance of it as a historical reality that, yes, the Puritans thought this. Yes, this was the political theology at the time. That's fine. How you actually get there without getting violent, I don't know. Because you have to, if power was inherited by blood back in the day, and now power is no longer distributed that way, ever since like maybe the birth of America, I'm not sure, but power went from being like something that was inherited by blood to now something that's in this constant tug of war between different parties and groups. And you have a group that is using old Reformed theology saying, we want to go back to that. And the reason it's called the woke right is because they say they want, I'm botching it. He'd probably disagree. I'm sorry, Stephen. But it sounds like they want to tear it. They do want to tear down what is to reinstitute something. But it is what is older classical Christianity, what they want to get back to. So in that sense, it's not woke. It is traditional values that they're interested in. I have another thing that can make that further complicated, but you go ahead.
No, it just seems like Baptists in this cultural moment they don't have the lights on for what's happening in these circles, where especially young men, because I'm a young man. Okay, so I'm in these circles online. I'm in the X, and you have the, and I say this with full respect, but you have the boomer academics and the boomer pastorates who are leading Baptist churches. And I don't mean that as a derogatory. I mean, they are doing that and they're faithfully doing that, but they're not even seeing that in the moment that we have, because we're addressing wokeism and leftism. People are then turning, they're saying, oh, this is a more conservative alternative than whatever the Baptists are offering. And those people are even saying the Baptists caused some of the liberalism. Who's even on the front lines of in this it feels like an internal Christian discussion right now, is my estimation. Because these people, as much as we're discussing them, don't have real political relevance in the sense that they're influencing policy or elections. Even though they think they do, they don't. Like Donald Trump's faith cabinet is full of.
Well, what about what about Pete Hegseth?
Pete Hegseth is one that you could say. Pete Hegseth is one you can say. William Wolfe being in the White House is definitely another. So that is the counter.
There.
Yeah, they're getting there, but that's also weird. How much of that is political versus them actually assenting to those ideas? But
and it might just swing straight back to the left after this election, or
but
presidency.
It seems like to me, and this again I'm not trying to make this about myself, but it's for the conversation of like, we're closer to what Mike Pence is politically and theologically, and even beyond that. Like, we have some of the same criticisms that a David French had, but David French is lame and is a loser.
Kicked him out.
It doesn't have any relevance in influencing the people that he thinks he should be influencing, really. So who is that? Like, who? And do you even need that? Like, do you even need to become that? Because I do think, in some senses, David French and the Russell Moores went too far, where they became reactionary in a different form. So I don't want to do that. And so, but I also think it's a distinctly Baptist thing.
I did a piece on Russell Moore. Did you see is voting Trump a sin?
I feel like I did see that. It might have been a while ago, but
essentially, from memory, I remember the main point being that the leftist position is, well, we want like Christianity can shine in a hostile culture or a culture hostile to Christianity. Therefore, Christian political engagement must be advocating for a hostile Christian culture in order that the orthodoxy of Christianity can shine.
Mm-hmm.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah,
we're not that, right? Like, we know it can, but Paul said to pray for peace among all men.
Mm-hmm.
So that can't be, and all you ever heard from my knowledge that Russell Moore and David French ever said was that we advocate for chaos in the culture surrounding Christianity so that we can shine as those faithful Christians. Mm-hmm. And that, and then on the other hand, you have really what like a Stephen Wolfe is doing is getting back to old conservatism. And that's that power is inherited by blood and what the king says goes. And then in addition to all of that, there is a discipline or a category of thinking. You could call it a secondary doctrine, like secondary issues like baptism. Like people go to different churches over secondary issues. I think that political theology is not an essential category. So maybe it's a second or third tier issue. But just because it's not essential doesn't mean it doesn't matter. And so then you have Baptist. So then you have to like figure out, what is my Baptist political theology?
Yeah.
and of course there's room for disagreement there, but you have to have a category for it. Like, that is a legitimate pursuit, that I'm applying Baptist theology to like the area of political theology. And I don't know a better place to start than you start with what the church is as a society. And then you determine what citizenship is in that society. And then you compare and contrast the surrounding societies around the church. Well, if the missions of the church and state are separate missions, then the citizenship in this society can't be identical to this society. That's Baptist theology. So then you really press, I feel like, you need to press and say, and this is the most technical way I know how to say it, like the most nitty gritty, but I could be wrong. But I argued with my liberal family members. It was my birthday. I said, what I want for my birthday is to stay up till 2 or 3 in the morning arguing around the campfire about politics. And in that conversation, awesome. I realized that what they were saying is that that the white Christian man can no longer have a seat at the table.
Right.
That's crazy.
And I'm like, but so also said Rushdoony and that white fascist on that debate, who said that we want to use democracy to end democracy so that no one else can have a seat at the table. So then the technical question would be, in our instituting documents, must we say that a civil magistrate cannot be an unbeliever? That he must be a believer? Like, in our documents, is it a sin if we don't write that the civil magistrate must be a Christian and can't be an unbeliever? And the reason that's important is because, getting back to the Baptist church setting, a holy society, we say that unbelievers are incompetent and unauthorized to vote in the matters of the church. And the theological basis for that is that they don't have the Spirit of God, so that the spiritual things are not discernible by the unspiritual man. So therefore, an unbeliever cannot come in and discern matters of the church. So then if Christian nationalism is saying that an unbeliever, that the civil magistrate's authority, that the civil magistrate is authorized by God in his office, and he's competent to judge in matters of doctrine and worship. So with blasphemy laws. Well, if you're a Presbyterian and you say that an unbeliever can't have that office, that's not a problem for you, right? But if you're a Baptist, well, your theology is already a little bit different because you don't believe that the civil magistrate is authorized by God to judge in matters of worship. So we just have those proper distinctions, and we say unbelievers can know and judge, and but they don't in matters of worship. So the way you enforce the first table of the law in the land is by upholding religious liberty. That's actually how the civil magistrate in Baptist political theology upholds the first table of the law, is that the civil magistrate upholds religious liberty and enforces the second table of the law. And then in that case, you do want to penalize adultery better. You do want to ban pornography. You do want to have, you probably shouldn't buy alcohol on Sundays. Like those kinds of laws are good, but we just need to rightly distinguish between civil issues and issues of worship, and you use separation of church and state to do so. I have more to say about that, but I've been rambling. So what do you think?
No, that's really good. It sounds like separation of church and state, properly understood, is the Baptist banner for political engagement.
What sucks is that leftists love that.
Yeah, that's the truth. Yeah, and then the way that they describe it is just that the government can do whatever they want.
Right. So that's why I came up with separation of missions of church and state. What is the mission of the church? Well, it's to evangelize and to preach the gospel and to make disciples and to administer the ordinances and worship and all those things. Church discipline. And then the mission of the state is to protect the citizens. It's to keep everybody civil. And that's a side note, but that's another thing that's scary about all this is they're arguing for uncivility, essentially. Because we'd have to have some kind of revolution to get so it's uncivil. But it's peace. The mission of the state is to achieve peace, like foreign, domestic peace among all men. And in the church, the church's mission came from heaven, right? I mean, it is peace among all men, but it's heaven. It's from God. It's special revelation. So I want to say a little bit about Peter in just a second, but what do y'all think?
No, I'm there with you. I mean, where does postmillennialism fit? Is that, from your perspective, is postmillennialism just made a huge comeback in these space? Is it like the theological backbone for this type of political theology that's pushing against separation of church and state?
This is why, and I need to do more work on these guys. I only really did barely anything in a video called I can't remember what makes the new right a powerful force, but I really just focused on Ogden. And they have Doug's serrated edge theology, his postmillennialism, and then they have, I think, Christian nationalism, but they're I don't know, the theonomic too. I can't remember what all I said in that, but the postmillennialism, kind of how I see, and I haven't really made this clear on the channel. I'll say it here. Right before we made this first video that came out this week, I was really still just trying to figure out because all these videos are like sections of a book for me called Confessing the Faith in the Cloud, God willing. And so what does that mean for future seasons? And I like to think of it as Van Til's family tree. So if you start with Van Til and all the different theology and how it trickles down, season 1, I really focused on eschatology. And then now I'm focusing on law. And so I do think that postmillennialism is not as much of a problem as Christian nationalist and theonomic views of law. But I do think that for some, it does drive them, and that Ogden is the prime example of that. But I don't see postmillennialism as a that serious of a threat. And I could be wrong, but I think it's part of a system for some, but I don't think it's the main problem. My main issue with postmillennialism is like the Christian getting on YouTube and hearing some bad theology about the kingdom of God for the sake of their motivation in the Christian life. That the reason you're living the Christian life is to serve your neighbor with gratitude because of what Christ has done for sinners on the cross, not to take dominion. So that's my biggest thing. However, I do think that postmillennialism opened up the door for other bad theologies. I just think that the biggest issue, I could be dead wrong about this, but is that it mucks up our motivation in political engagement, postmillennialism.
Yeah.
I think all millennialism, two kingdom theology, especially the likes of Richard B. Gaffin, is the best already but not yet theology that motivates Christians. Like, I'm doing this because he already won. And it's so mind-blowing. I guess I can segue to Peter. It's so mind-blowing that I am such an overcomer in Christ that when I get cancer and die, I just took dominion. That's Paul in Romans 8. He says, nothing can separate us from the love of God in Christ, not the demons of hell, and not even cancer. Like, you have overcome. And that's what Jesus said. Like, take heart, I have overcome the world. And that's our motivation. And we know, like, I'm not adding to the kingdom or growing the kingdom. The kingdom's here, and the church is an outpost of the kingdom. And I meet with the citizens of that kingdom every single Sunday. So you have Peter looking at Nero, and his advice to Christians is look at your heart, watch your sins. And it might sound like I'm contradicting myself about, like, oh, well, political theology is a legitimate discipline and category. But to me, I don't have time to take over the world because I'm still too busy taking over the sins of my own heart. You know, I'm still killing the flesh. And I just always think of this, like, this in 1662, there was that act of uniformity where they ejected all the Puritan ministers out of their pulpits. And you have Thomas Watson get I think it was Watson. It was Thomas Watson or Thomas Brooks. Got up in the pulpit. There's a Puritan paperback called Sermons of the Great Ejection. You can go buy that for $5. And in it, his advice, his last sermon to his people is be content, repent, stay prayerful, watchful. Like, you're talking about, like, actual persecution of the preached word. You know, COVID came close. Like, y'all can't. At least they had some kind of pseudo reason why you couldn't do that. But no, like, the Church of England said it is illegal for you to preach the gospel. You know, and that to me, like, Peter's words in 1st and 2nd Peter, to not suffer as a wrongdoer. Like, if you get in trouble with the state, don't let it be because you're a troublemaker or a revolter. Get in trouble because as you're doing the right thing. So watch your heart. And I don't know if that answers your question. I feel like that does invite the criticism of, oh, well, you're just a pietist. You know, I'm not saying, like, again, I watch the news every day. I vote. I think it's dumb to not vote. We send our kids to a classical Christian school. We love it. They kind of like Doug Wilson at that school. And someone asked me the other day, what are your thoughts on Doug Wilson? I said, I want my pastor to not like him, but I want my principal to like him. For my daughter. Because she's not her pastor. You know, this principal is like a strict, but there is a sense in which there's societal things over here. And I guess that gets back to the sense of which, like, I'm not trying to get Stephen Wolfe or Presbyterians to not be Christian nationalists. My message is to Baptists.
Yeah.
Primarily. You know, and I've never said that like Christian nationalists shouldn't be Christian nationalists. I said Baptists are inconsistent if they're Christian nationalists. And therefore I think you're inconsistent with Peter's message to suffer.
Yeah.
But then the key is I don't advocate for a political environment in which people suffer. But if we're suffering, you encourage the Christian, keep your eyes on Christ. Your hope actually isn't in this world. Am I making sense? Like,
yeah, no, you are. Yeah.
And
it's the encouragement I need to check my own heart online and when we're having these conversations. I really want to go to battle with some of these Christian nationalists, and that's because I studied politics. I grew up in that world. I'm very politically motivated, but I disagree with the nationalist tendencies of these people. But then I'm a Baptist, and I'm getting more theologically educated on that front, and I'm like, this is more important. And not to say that necessarily these conflict, like you're saying, Bob. Like, political engagement is important, but the type of it's. I feel like some people turn to Christian nationalists because of the despair that we see in government and in policy, and they feel like that's their only hope, and that's because we're not giving them the hope of the gospel and the hope of a life change that comes through the theological understanding that we share in Christ and in the Baptist theology and historical understanding of that. But I want to touch on this too, and I also want to mention we're at an hour, Bob, so cut me off if we're going too long. Okay. But you have a Matthew Barrett who is doing theological retrieval, was somewhat branded as Baptist theological retrieval, but then kind of distanced from that. I think it's incredibly important to understand the historic Baptist positions on these issues, because, you know, if we think Christian nationalism an issue now, like you said, these are just people trying to bring back the old views and how it used to be, and our tradition really sprung in the midst of that, or at least directly after that.
Yeah.
And so what does Baptist theological retrieval look like today? And is it even, I think a big question on people's mind when they look at Matthew Barrett, is it even something worth pursuing? And is it a viable alternative to Christian nationalism?
Yeah, I think that there's the Reformed Baptists that I have rolled with have been doing theological retreat. I'm stealing from Tom Askell. I heard him say this today. I think it's in the video coming out tomorrow. That Founders Ministries was doing theological retrieval before it was cool, before it had a name. And because they had to. Like, that's what Founders means.
Yeah.
It was, the whole brand was the SBC needs to get back to its roots. It's a confessionally reform, like the SBC comes from the New Hampshire, which comes from the Second London and the Reformed particular Baptist tradition. So they've been retrieving. And then we leaned on, I don't know how familiar you guys are with Richard Muller, was really the guy that an academic level really made retrieval very popular for all Reformed people, those both Presbyterians and Baptists. And he became very popular at Westminster Escondido. He's popular worldwide, but that was like a really hot spot. And before the international, what is it called? International Reformed Baptist, I don't know, RBS.
Mm-hmm.
It was the Institute of Reformed Baptist Studies in SoCal. So those guys have been doing Retrieval. We've been doing it. Matthew Barrett put it like on the spot, and James Dolezal's All That Is in God really put Retrieval on the spot. And I don't know what the background is like for you when you ask about Retrieval, but to me, it's like, what does, for example, and this is what made me think of Muller, what does first and secondary causation mean in the confession? Like in God's decree and providence. You can't understand that unless you study the history of the term. And you need, I think I'll probably have it behind me, the Richard Muller's. If you're doing seminary, you got to grab Richard Muller's Dictionary of Greek and Latin Terms.
Yeah.
You have it?
No, I don't, but I will.
Oh, it's so good. I could sit and just read, because you'll read one and then it'll turn you to another spot in the book. You're just learning Latin and Greek. Yeah, I think that Retrieval. I think this question is helpful. Like, is a Baptist? I'm stealing from Tom Hicks. Is a Baptist one who dips? Well, if that's the only thing that makes a Baptist, then a gay person can be a Baptist minister.
Yeah.
Right.
Or we're Pentecostal.
Mm-hmm.
And no, so Baptists are Catholic Christians. They have received the Nicene Creed. We received all, and when you read, like, I could do a quick family tree. Like, when you read the Second London, well, it came from the Westminster, and the Westminster came from the 39 and Irish Articles, and those came from the creeds and confessions before it, and those go back, to the start of the church. And so, this is a great question. I'm not trying to be rude. I don't even understand what the discussion would even be. I'm more thinking of, like, with all due respect, I love James White, but with all due respect to James White, like, making fun of Retrieval, well, the idea of Retrieval, it's like, what are we doing if it's not retrieving our faith? Like, wasn't Timothy supposed to retrieve Paul's words and receive them when he said, take what I gave to you and pass it down? And then pass it down. Now, if a generation forgets it, ought that generation retrieve what had been passed down? So then the question is just like, and this gets back to what we were talking about earlier, maybe Matthew Barrett's problem was that he wasn't distinctively a Reformed Baptist, as far as, at least in the branding, it never was obvious that he was retrieving it as a Baptist, but he was retrieving it just as a Christian. And Christian Baptists are Christians, but there needs to be, I think I saw Luke Stamp say this, Center for Baptist Renewal. He said that we need to do more work on the Baptists of the 17th century's retrieval of medieval and patristic Christianity. That they did it. They certainly did, because you see the language in the doctrine of God's impassibility goes back to the creeds in the Second London. So they retrieved it. So when we retrieve the Baptist, we're retrieving what they retrieved, and we're just passing it down, and we're confessing that pattern of sound words. So then, just do it as a Baptist. And then one more thing, this is in the video coming out tomorrow, but Michael Haken wrote a response article to Matthew Barrett, and you get the sense from the Second London that because it riffs off of the Westminster, is inherently a Catholic in spirit document, because it's willing to say, we want to steal 70% of your thing.
Yeah.
But just note where we disagree. And then they say, when they published it, we don't want to clog religion with new words, but just repeat the old words and note where we disagree. That's retrieval. And it's passing down. It's confessing the faith once for all delivered to the saints. So the Second London, to me, Matthew Barrett's statement that that Baptists are modern to the bone really blew my mind when he said that, because the Second London is a testament to Catholicity precisely because we stole the Westminster. Because
Right.
we're identifying with the rest of Christianity, but then pointing out where we disagree.
Mm-hmm.
Does that answer your question? Like, to me, it's just like baked into the Baptist faith that we're retrievers. And that Matthew's problem was that he didn't do it as a Baptist.
Yeah, I would like to believe that that's baked into the Baptist, but there's some, I don't know, and maybe that there's just bad Baptists, I guess, that aren't.
Oh man, we need to.
I see a lot of I see a lot of churches that are just abandoning the entire label of Baptist at all. They're Baptist in ecclesiology, in polity, clearly, but they're just like, hey, we're
E3
River blah 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 church,
we're community church.
Yeah, and it's that.
Oh man, that grinds my gears when you take the
community church thing.
Do what?
Yeah, the community church.
Oh yeah,
type vibe. Yeah.
Take the name Baptist out of it. Why do you do that? But I do think that there needs to be a proud and robust commitment to sola scriptura, and Sam Waldron has written articles on this about. And I'll push back against, maybe this is getting what you're touching at.
Yeah,
I will push back against the term "the great tradition."
Mm-hmm. Yep, I've heard that.
That one sits a little bit weirder with me for some reason than retrieval, because retrieval is a verb or an act. But when you say the great tradition, why don't you just say Christianity? And once you use the word tradition, because our faith. The thing is, our faith doesn't come from man.
Yeah.
And this gets back to my obsession with Van Til, who was like so wrong about a lot of stuff. But I do think that this idea that the Christian filled with the Spirit of God is the only creature able to understand spiritual things. So this, like, when you're reading the New Testament, like, imagine the patristics and the church fathers reading about Jesus for the first time and what that was like. Like, when next time you read your Bible, if you want to like freshen up your sola scriptura vibes, just imagine what if this is like, I'd never heard of Jesus before, and this is the first time I'm hearing about him. Sounds weird being a confessional Baptist saying that. I'm not saying set your theological assumptions aside, but I think there might be a muscle there that we could exercise a little bit more. Like, okay, these words that I'm reading right now, I've been trying to do this for the past 2 weeks after I've listened to hundreds of hours of Nick Fuentes. Now I'm like, I need to get my mind right, bro. like,
that's self-torture right there.
I need to sit, and I'm just been reading Jesus, and I'm like, there's a sense of danger of familiarity. Like, man, this, and I'm reading John Bunyan on prayer right now, and he said that there is no prayer that's not sincere. And if it's not sincere, it's not a prayer. And so I want a sincere reading of the scriptures and a sincere response in my prayer that this didn't come from man. It didn't come from tradition. It came from heaven. And now it's not a matter of whether or not I have a confession, but whether or not it's written down. So now it's, is my tradition, is my confession lined up with this faith that came right smack dab out of heaven into my life? So anyway, that's
all right. I want to roll out. I want to roll it down so we can get you out on time, Bob. You want just a couple audience questions, and then we're good to go.
Go ahead.
Some of these, I don't even. They're probably still not watching, but they came up, and I think it's funny. Baptists are legalistic. What do you think about that?
I feel like that was a troll, or a troll. Yeah, just trying to get a reaction.
I mean, I guess engaging with the fundamentalist Baptists.
Yeah. I was going to say,
if that's your only perception of what Baptists are.
I don't know if this is a Midwest thing, but in the Midwest, at the very least, they're like the rep that Baptist churches get here is that they're just the legalistic skirts to the ground, like I would be thrown out of the church because my hair can cover my ears. Like that's the rep that they get, kind of in the Midwest at least.
Mm-hmm.
Or your SBC.
Or your SBC. The
SBC the term legalistic,
Midwest,
getting thrown around. I always just go, what do you mean by that? You know, like legalism is anytime Romans 4:11 or 4 something says, where there is no law, there is no sin. So if you're not breaking one of God's commandments, you aren't sinning. That's the doctrine of Christian freedom. So if someone is breaching your conscience and saying, hey, stop this behavior and your behavior is not sinful, that's legalism. To say Baptists are legalistic, that's not fair, because I know tons of Baptists that don't do that. So that's my response.
Right.
No. I don't even know if that was a real. Anyway.
Probably not.
Maybe that's a bot.
Usually they
are.
You know, they're probably bots. This one I think was a substantive question. Since humans are made up of body and soul, wouldn't it be the best interest of citizens to uphold the first table?
Yeah, but then how does... Yes, would it be in the best interest of citizens to uphold the first table? Yes. Citizens must obey the first table of law. Because human beings must believe the gospel. They must worship the triune God. They must worship and according to his commands. They must not ever take the Lord's name in vain. They must obey the Sabbath. The question is the civil magistrate authorized by God to enforce that on all the citizens in his jurisdiction? And Theonomy says the civil magistrate is in sin if he doesn't, not just Theonomy, but just even broader Christian versions of this, that the civil magistrate is obligated by God to enforce the first table. And Baptist theology says no, because and I talked mostly about civil magistrates, but here's another question. In light of this question from Mason, must citizenship in a nation be made up of only regenerate believers? That's Baptist theology says yes for the church, but do we do that in the nation, or those with credible professions of faith anyway? Do you see what I'm saying? Like, yes, they should obey the first table, but is he saying that the civil magistrate's in sin if he doesn't fine or deport or kill people who don't have credible professions of faith in that society? He can think that, but that's not Baptist.
All right, that's the only ones. So that's it. All right. Thanks, Bob, for coming on, having the conversation. I want to get you out on time and get you some rest after a long day of work. Thank you for the conversation again. We'd love to have you back on in the future. Talk more Baptist theology, all that stuff, culture issues, and I don't know. All the fun.
Guys,
we're calling it Baptist maxing. That's what we're doing over here. So
I've seen that a little bit. People saying that.
Yeah. So sweet. We're gonna continue doing that. But thanks for coming on. Thanks everyone for watching.
Thank you guys for having me.
Absolutely. I'm going to end the stream and then we'll go about our business.
Sweet. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.